Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado has long railed on the House floor that the left is grooming children by exposing them to what she calls obscene content.
We have children going to drag bars, grown men dancing and twerking provocatively in front of children. This is absolutely wrong. I will not apologize for standing up against this. What an adult chooses to do in their life, that's fine. Just leave our children out of it.
On Friday, Boebert apologized for her own behavior, coming at a recent performance of the family-friendly musical Beetlejuice.
I was laughing, I was singing, having a fantastic time.
A fantastic time indeed. That was Colorado Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert responding to being kicked out of a Beetlejuice musical over the weekend in Denver for being too disruptive.
Just leave our children out of it.
You know, it's been a really long time since I've been fondled in a theater. There used to be this drive-in movie theater near where I grew up, and back in the day, don't tell my parents, but I used to get in quite a bit of trouble. But you know, that was back when I was a teenager with daddy issues. And as you see, I have turned a leaf, become a whole new person. But you know, I'd be lying to you if I told you that I wasn't a little bit jealous about what Lauren Boebert's been up to. Before we get into this video, I wanted to let you guys know that it's sponsored by Nebula. Nebula is a creator-owned streaming service that I'm part of that allows creators like myself to create content that they can't quite create on YouTube. Quite frequently, YouTube has made me remove portions of my videos, or I've had to edit out some of the things in order to post it onto YouTube. And Nebula is where I'm able to just post my content in full without stifling my voice or sacrificing my content. Currently, there are several videos of mine on Nebula that are exclusively on Nebula in their true form, and the same is true for a handful of other creators like Todd in the Shadow, FD Signifier, Philosophy Tube. Format in a Foreign Land has been uploading some Nebula exclusive content, specifically making content from his cultural perspective, and right now, if you sign up with the link in the description box below, you can get 40% off of an annual membership of Nebula, and it comes bundled with Nebula classes where creators give insight into their creative process. Anyway, let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. Now, I'm sure most of you already know Lauren Boebert. She has made herself known as, frankly, one of the most annoying members of Congress. But for those of you guys who don't know her, let's just quickly introduce you to this piece of work. So Lauren Boebert is a congresswoman from Colorado, and she is gun obsessed. I mean, she loves guns so much that she actually owns a gun-themed restaurant. She's a born-again Christian, which of course means that she is a very specific breed of religiously sanctimonious. And as an extension of that, she is, of course, one of those Republicans leading the charge against the LGBT community. And she's specifically against things like Drag Queen Story Hour, where she believes that drag queens are exposing themselves sexually to children in order to groom them. Name any standard right-wing Republican GOP talking point, and she is definitely going to take the most extreme stance. For example, she's pro-life, and she believes that even if a woman is raped, that she should be forced to have her rapist child because, you know, think of the kids or whatever. And I didn't actually know this until very recently, but she actually earned her GED a month before becoming a congresswoman. But I'll be honest, that didn't surprise me at all. But what actually did surprise me, especially as a thespian, is that she is a fan of musical theater. Do Lauren Boebert and I have common ground? In fact, she appreciates it so much that she was particularly rowdy at a showing of the Beetlejuice musical in Denver, Colorado. So rowdy, in fact, that she actually had to be escorted out by ushers. And, you know, as a former thespian who enjoys theater, side note, this is like my nightmare. How embarrassing. Apparently she was vaping, taking flash photos, singing very loudly, and you can see in the footage, which we'll get to later, that she is quite literally the only person doing this intersection. Like, oh my God, just, woof. I envy people who can go in public and act like this and literally not care. I want to make it very clear for everybody who doesn't go to theater very often that usually when you enter into a theater, there are some very large signs that tell you what you can do and what you can't do. One of the most standard things they tell you not to do is take pictures, specifically because they want to keep the performance private, in a theater setting, but also because when you take especially flash photos, you can shine up into an actor's eyes and mess with them. It's just totally unnecessary. I know that the people who were on stage were happy and appreciative of the fact that there was an enthusiastic member of the audience. But at the end of the day, even before we get to the other shit that she did, this was just way over the line. But the rules don't apply to Lauren Boebert. Don't you know who she is? Now, initially, she denied doing all the above. Specifically, she denied that she was vaping, and she instead said that it was fog machines, which I guess, the fog machine was just sending out like a really small cloud of fog in like one specific area, I guess. What she didn't anticipate is that she would be caught on security cameras doing literally all the things that she was accused of. And, if you look at this footage, it is just kind of comical. You see her taking a picture. You see her vaping on her little e-cigarette and blowing smoke. And by the way, you can actually see that she's seated in front of a pregnant woman, and the media interviewed this pregnant woman who apparently asked her to stop smoking. And guess what? She didn't stop. She continued to blow smoke in this pregnant woman's face. And the security camera actually caught so much more. Apparently, she was on a date, and you can see in this footage that she and her date get pretty handsy. He touches her breast. She puts her hand in his crotch and does what she do. Oh, and the sweet devil icing on the cake is that the guy is actually a Democrat. A Democrat who owns a bar in Aspen, Colorado, where they host. That's my failed attempt at doing a drum roll. I was a theater kid, not a musician. Drag shows. Oh, it's just too good.
Ultimately, all future date nights have been canceled, and I learned to check party affiliations before you go on a date.
All right, so what happened that night?
Hi, Jesse. First of all, what happened is I messed up. I went on a date night, and I am a congresswoman and a public figure, but believe it or not, I'm human too. Obviously everyone is very interested in my personal life and me going through a very difficult divorce. And as a mother of 4 boys and a grandmother to a beautiful grandson, that's my first job before anything else in my priority.
So you were so enthralled by Beetlejuice, you got carried away.
A little bit. Jesse, it's been 20 years since I was in the dating scene, and back then there were not infrared cameras watching my every move, but it's a lesson learned. As I said, I'm truly humbled and apologize to my people in Colorado's 3rd District.
When faced with all of this, she very predictably blamed her divorce and said that, this is just not in line with her moral compass. This is just so out of character for her. But let's be real for a second. This is exactly who Lauren Boebert is when she thinks no one's watching. In fact, I would say that this is actually who most of these GOP Republicans are when they think that no one's watching. And a lot of people are saying that she's a hypocrite. And they're calling out a lot of GOP Republicans for engaging in similar things that contradict what they've publicly expressed their positions are. And I know that a lot of liberals feel really smart when they do that. It feels like you're doing something by calling out their hypocrisy. But like I said, Lauren Boebert knew what the rules were. She saw the rules when she walked into that theater. She probably even heard a voice over the intercom telling everybody that there is no flash photography or smoking, etc., etc., etc. But for her, the rules don't apply. In fact, when she was dragged out of the theater, the first thing she said was, do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? I'm a congresswoman. Do you know who I am? These people know that they're being hypocritical, but that's because it's not about logical consistency or actually believing in what you say. It's all about power. The rules aren't supposed to apply to them, right? That's for, just normal common folk like you and I. People like her and people like Donald Trump, of course, are above the law. They can break the law because they're the in group, not the out group. People like you and I simply need to fall in line and follow the rule of law. And while there are some conservatives who are criticizing her, and there are some conservatives who are calling her out and saying that she's not on our side, she is an embarrassment to the community and da-da-da-da-da, there's a pretty sizable portion of conservative Republicans who are still going to vote for her. After all, she's one of the most obviously underqualified members of Congress, but she still manages to win elections. For a lot of people in her state, it doesn't really matter that she was grabbing dicks at a theater. What matters is that she's voting along the lines around certain issues that they really care about, like abortion and gender-affirming care. And Republicans with very little to offer will often cling to these hot-button issues like wokeness and such because it allows them to mobilize an undereducated base of people who are willing to vote against their interests and for the interest of corporations and private interest groups that are ultimately invested in disenfranchising the populace so that the populace will become dependent on them. People may argue that she's acting in contradiction to her Christian values, but the only value her Christianity has is it gives her access to an already mobilized group of people who have shown over the years throughout history that they're willing to be violent to defend their religious beliefs. See, the irony is that Christians groom children from a very young age into their religion. And as a person who used to go to Christian private school, I can definitely attest to that. For the very early part of my life, I was quite literally never in a situation where somebody didn't believe in God. Like, I went to Christian private school, I was deep in the church, everybody that I knew was religious. And when you grow up like that, there are so many things about the way that hell is defined, the way that sin is defined, that makes it so hard for you to think outside of that. And I remember when I went to secular school, which of course is still how I think about it as a former private school Christian girl, I remember being shocked, blown away that there were like other people out in the world who had a different belief, right? Like the fact that some people didn't believe in God and also the fact that some people believed in other gods quite literally blew my mind. And people like Lauren Boebert are incredibly invested in this idea of removing separation between church and state.
The reason we had so many overreaching regulations in our nation is because the church complied. The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
And while I believe that there are probably some people who definitely believe their religion and are in politics for that reason, from what I can piece together from situations like this, there are an awful lot of people who are just simply aware of the chokehold that Christianity has in this country. There is already an established history of power and influence within the Christian faith, and at least mobilizing around the Christian faith. And there are a lot of people who are frankly interested in forwarding some very a-Christian things while claiming to be Christian. And that's the part, even as an atheist, that I kind of get upset about, because as somebody who was raised in the church, I feel sort of offended that people like this exist. You very clearly are not Christian. You very clearly are not religious. You are just using religion as a way to put shit that your rich buddies want into the fucking government. Like, Anyway, let me not go off. There's a lot of conservatives who will only publicly mobilize around Christianity to gain power, but privately they act in incredibly unchristian ways. And we already knew this. You know, I get so annoyed that people listen to shit that Donald Trump says and they genuinely think that this is a man who walks with God. Like, come on. Right? But so many people are willing to just blindly vote for and support a politician. If the politician comes out and says, you know, I'm with God and I believe in, you know, Jesus. We used to believe that you showed your relationship with God in the way that you treated the people around you, that God lived through your actions, right? And the fact that Lauren Boebert was doing all that in public, shocking to me, right? Very, very shocking to me as a woman who is, I believe, 36 years old, who definitely knows better, who knows what the rules are and decided to act against them. It's hard for me to really believe that this person is a Christian, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. We could literally spend hours talking about how she's a hypocrite and going down every one of her political stances and fact checking it and challenging it and proving that she's wrong with logic and reason. But none of that matters because it's not about that. It's about power. These people know that they privately contradict the things that they profess publicly. They know it so much that they're willing to protect each other when they've committed crimes. We're seeing that very clearly in the Donald Trump case. People like Lauren Boebert can't be reasoned with. It's not worth wasting your time trying to contradict what they're saying. On an individual level, there are some people who are like I was when I was coming out of my Christian private school background, right? People who were raised in very conservative areas who don't really have access to people outside of that, who are being misled by politicians like Lauren Boebert to believe things that simply are not true. And I think those people are worth speaking to. Those people are worth reaching out to. But I think it's super important to understand that people like Lauren Boebert and a lot of other people who are in a similar vein to her are not people who care about you calling out their hypocrisy. That's absolutely not going to convince them because they can't be convinced. Personally, I'll probably never believe that a politician means what they say in public, whether they're on the right or the left. But people like Lauren Boebert are such a cartoonish level of obviously reading talking points to get certain people to react emotionally in a certain way. And it's just sad to me that people fall for it. It is kind of depressing. I think those are the people who you can probably get through to. But people like Lauren Boebert aren't even interested in having like an honest interaction around these ideas. They are not at all invested in the people. That is why they're defunding education. They want for people to be undereducated because they're more likely to vote along these Republican lines. And to be clear, I'm not a person who believes that all conservatives are like terrible people or whatever, but most of y'all are indeed voting for those people. Most of y'all are indeed still siding with people like Lauren Boebert. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a distinction without a difference, right? I'm gonna need some of y'all to start voting these people out, because if you don't do that, I'm just gonna believe that this is what you stand for. You stand for people like that doing shit that she did. You know what was so funny to me about this? As a teenager, I might have been wild, but as an adult, I can't imagine doing any of this. Literally any of this. Like I said, this is one of my worst nightmares. I could not imagine vaping in a theater surrounded by families and children. And it's not like she was, hidden around people or they were being sneaky. She was sitting out on the outside seat where people can very clearly see that something is happening to her, right? So anyway, I'm not going to be mad at her for getting a boo thing, and especially since he's a bar owner in Aspen, Colorado. Girl, sprinkle, sprinkle. But I'm trying to say, there's a certain segment of my audience who understands that. But I'm not mad at her for being into a dude and, being intimate with someone. All of that's beautiful for your private home, right? Not in public where children can see, right? But there's something to be said about being a congresswoman and being boisterous like that and not at all thinking that it would come back on you. It was just tacky. It was just tacky. It was just very, very tacky. Y'all could have at least gone to a matinee showing of The Sound of Freedom, because at least in that situation, y'all would have been the only people in the theater, you know? But anyway, I'm really curious what y'all have to say about this. This was one doozy of a story, and I just felt like talking about it. I don't want to slut shame. Girl, get it where you get it, but just get it at home. You a little too old to be out here like that, young lady. You are not me as a teenager with daddy issues in the drive-in movie theater. Come on, girl, get it together. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next time. I want you to always remember and to never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye.